Right now, at this exact moment, while you are sitting inside your house, warm, still, breathing without effort, the hummingbird that spent all summer at your feeder is somewhere over the Gulf of Mexico. Not near it, not approaching it, over it. 900 miles of open water beneath its wings. No land, no trees, no flowers, nothing to stop on, nothing to drink from, nothing to save it if something goes wrong. And it weighs less than a penny. That is not a metaphor. A ruby-throated hummingbird in fall migration weighs between 3 and 6 grams. A single penny weighs 2.5 grams. The bird crossing one of the most dangerous stretches of water in the Western Hemisphere right now is barely heavier than 2 coins in your pocket. Most people who love hummingbirds, and if you're here, you love them, have never been told the full truth about what migration actually costs these birds. What their bodies go through, what the odds look like, what happens to the ones that don't make it. Today, that changes. The Gulf of Mexico crossing is the single most dangerous event in a ruby-throated hummingbird's life. Most people imagine hummingbird migration as a gentle drift southward. Flowers to flowers. Warm days, short hops, easy travel. The reality is almost the opposite. Ruby-throated hummingbirds that breed in the eastern United States and Canada. The birds that visit your yard migrate to Central America and Mexico for the winter. And the most direct route between the Gulf Coast of the United States and the Yucatan Peninsula is straight across the water. 900 miles. Non-stop. At a cruising speed of roughly 25 miles per hour, that crossing takes between 18 and 22 hours of continuous flight. No rest, no food, no water, just wings moving at 53 beats per second, hour after hour, in darkness, over open ocean. Let that number land. 53 wing beats per second. For up to 22 hours straight. A human athlete running a marathon burns approximately 2,600 calories over 26 miles. A ruby-throated hummingbird completing the Gulf crossing burns the caloric equivalent of a human running back-to-back marathons, in a body the size of your thumb. The physics of what these birds do is so extreme that for years ornithologists did not believe it was possible. Early researchers assumed hummingbirds must island hop, moving along the coast and crossing shorter stretches of water. Then radar tracking and banding data confirmed what the birds had been doing all along. They fly straight across. They always have. Here is what your hummingbird did in your yard before it left, and why you need to understand this. In the 6 weeks before departure, something dramatic happens inside a ruby-throated hummingbird's body. It enters a phase called hyperphagia, a state of compulsive, almost frantic eating driven by hormonal changes triggered by shortening daylight hours. During hyperphagia, a hummingbird will visit flowers and feeders hundreds of times per day. It is not hungry in the way we understand hunger. It is executing a biological program, converting nectar and insects into fat reserves at a rate that seems impossible for an animal that size. In those 6 weeks, a ruby-throated hummingbird can increase its body weight by 25 to 40%. A bird that weighed 3.5 grams in July may weigh nearly 5 grams by late September. That extra weight, less than 2 grams, is the fuel for the entire Gulf crossing. Think about that. Everything. Every hour of that 18 to 22-hour flight. Every one of those 53 wing beats per second. Every mile of those 900 miles of open water. All of it is powered by less than 2 grams of fat. An amount so small you could not feel it if you held it in your palm. If your feeder was full during late summer, if you kept it clean and stocked through September when most people stopped paying attention, you were part of that preparation. The nectar your hummingbird took from your feeder in those final weeks may have been converted directly into the fuel that carried it across the Gulf. You fed the crossing. You may not have known that. Now you do. At 11:47 p.m. on a night in early October, your hummingbird lifts off a branch somewhere along the Gulf Coast. It does not announce this. There is no gathering, no group departure, no flock. Ruby-throated hummingbirds migrate alone. Every individual bird makes the decision independently, reading internal signals, fat reserves, wind direction, barometric pressure, the angle of stars, and when those signals align, it goes. It climbs to a cruising altitude between 500 and 1,500 feet above the water and points south. The navigation system it uses to find the Yucatan Peninsula from the Louisiana coast in complete darkness is something human technology has only recently begun to understand. Ruby-throated hummingbirds, like most migratory birds, can perceive the Earth's magnetic field directly, not sense it vaguely. See it through a protein called cryptochrome in the cells of their eyes that responds to magnetic field lines and translates them into visual information. To your hummingbird flying over dark water at midnight, the world does not look dark. It looks like a glowing navigational map overlaid on the night sky, a grid of magnetic information that tells it exactly where it is and exactly which direction leads to survival. It also navigates by stars. Research on hummingbird migration has confirmed that they use constellation patterns as fixed reference points, recalibrating continuously as the Earth's rotation moves the stars across the sky. On cloudy nights, when stars are hidden, the magnetic field becomes the primary compass. The bird crossing the Gulf right now is simultaneously processing magnetic, celestial, and atmospheric data while flying at 25 miles per hour, while managing fuel consumption to the fraction of a calorie, in a brain the size of a grape. There is no instrument humans have built that does what that brain does. This is the part most people who love hummingbirds never hear. And I'm going to tell you because you deserve to know the full truth about the bird you've been watching all summer. The Gulf crossing kills hummingbirds. Not rarely, regularly. Storms are the primary threat. A weather system moving across the Gulf during peak migration can create headwinds that push a hummingbird backward, burning through fat reserves far faster than the bird's calculations predicted. A bird that departed with exactly enough fuel for 22 hours of calm conditions may run out over open water if it fights headwinds for even 3 or 4 hours. When that happens, the bird goes down. Researchers studying hummingbird mortality during Gulf crossings have found that cold fronts moving south in October, the same fronts that push hummingbirds to depart in the first place, can turn catastrophic mid-crossing. The same wind that gave the bird a favorable tailwind at departure can shift, change direction, and become a wall the bird cannot fly through. Offshore oil platforms in the Gulf of Mexico have documented something heartbreaking during migration season. Exhausted hummingbirds land on the platforms, sometimes dozens of them in a single night, too depleted to continue. Workers on those platforms have described hummingbirds landing on their hands, on their shoulders, on their equipment, too tired to be afraid. Birds that have been flying for 15 or 16 hours over open water, running on the last fraction of their fat reserves, landing on a steel platform in the middle of the ocean because it was the only solid surface within range. Some of those birds recover. They rest for hours, sometimes a full day, and then continue south when conditions improve. Some do not recover. The ones that don't, there is no drama in how it ends. A bird that has used its last calorie simply cannot generate enough heat to keep its body temperature stable. It goes still, and then the ocean takes it. Every ruby-throated hummingbird that has ever visited your yard has either survived this crossing or is yet to face it. There is no other option. The crossing is the price of the life they live. Now here is what nobody talks about. The crossing happens twice. Spring migration brings your hummingbird back, and the return crossing is in some ways even more demanding than the fall journey. In spring, the birds are traveling north after months in Central America. They arrive at the Gulf Coast of Mexico lean, with winter's reduced food supply behind them. They must eat aggressively along the Yucatan coast before attempting the northward crossing, building fat reserves again, reading weather windows again, making the same calculation again. And then they fly north, 900 miles, again. The birds that arrive at your feeder in late April or early May, the first flash of iridescent green at the feeder you've just put back out, have just completed that crossing within the past few days. The bird hovering at your feeder on the first warm morning of May is not simply arriving from somewhere warm. It has just survived one of the most physically demanding journeys any animal on the planet makes. It is thinner than when it left. It is tired in ways we cannot measure. And the first thing it is looking for, the thing it needs immediately, is food. If your feeder is out, clean, and filled when that bird arrives, you are not just a convenient food source. You are the difference between a bird that recovers quickly and continues north to breed, and a bird that struggles. Research on hummingbird return migration has shown something remarkable about feeder loyalty. Ruby-throated hummingbirds do not simply return to the same general area each spring. They return to the same specific locations, the same yard, the same feeder position, sometimes within feet of where they fed the previous year. They remember, not vaguely, specifically. The hummingbird coming back to your yard this spring has a spatial memory of your yard that is more precise than most humans have of places they visit regularly. It knows where your feeder hangs. It knows which flowers bloom first in your garden. It knows the perch it prefers. It has been carrying a detailed map of your yard through months of Central American winter. And it is using that map right now to navigate home. Here is what I want you to sit with. The hummingbird that chose your yard, and I want you to hear that word, chose, did not end up at your feeder by accident. Ruby-throated hummingbirds have a documented tendency to return to the same breeding territories year after year. A bird that found your yard safe, your feeder reliable, your garden full of flowers. That bird filed your yard in a memory that persists across thousands of miles of migration, across an ocean crossing that should not be survivable, across a winter in a country most of us have never visited. And when spring comes, when the magnetic map in its eyes and the star patterns it has been tracking for months converge on your neighborhood, it comes back to you. Not to your street, not to your general area, to you. There is a version of that fact that is purely biological. A bird returning to a reliable food source. Adaptive behavior shaped by millions of years of evolution. And that version is true. But there is another version that I think is also true, and I don't think science and feeling have to be in conflict here. Every time that hummingbird hovered at your window, every time it seemed to look directly at you while it fed, every time it came back on the first warm day of May when you had just put the feeder out, something was happening that was more than random. A creature that had survived the impossible was returning to a place it had decided was worth returning to. A place it had decided was safe. A place it had decided was home. That was a decision about your yard. But it was also, in every way that matters, a decision about you. The next time that hummingbird appears at your feeder, hovering for a moment, catching the light, gone in a second, I want you to know what it just came through to get back to you. I want you to know what it cost. And I want you to know that out of every yard it could have chosen, every feeder on every street in your entire neighborhood, chose yours. Tell me in the comments, when does your hummingbird usually come back in spring? And have you ever felt like it recognized you specifically when it returned? I want to hear your stories. I read every single one. I'll see you in the next one.